back to the Screensavers. I'm Patrick Norton. Coming up in this half hour, we're going to show you a storage solution. Well, it might just save your bacon, and we're going to pick up more of your live calls. But you get your new machine, maybe you install a new game, you're trying to squeeze the last bit of power from your older PC. There are a lot of tweaks you can do that'll help your gaming performance. And we got the man himself, Tech TV Lab Rat, Robert Heron. Robert, you've spent most of your adult life playing video games.
Yeah.
And most of the last 5 years of your career benchmarking systems.
Definitely.
So we're going to run through, we're going to talk a little bit about hardware, a little bit about software. In terms of
for everyone.
What's the, in terms of gaming, if you want to spend some money, should you optimize your software first, then start hardware upgrading?
Take a look at the hardware first. That's really where all performance starts from. CPU and memory being the two big ones. Having the faster CPU, the better.
Right.
If you can upgrade on your current motherboard with a CPU that's twice as fast, that's by far the biggest bang for the buck you're going to see. Memory, on the other hand, games get worse and worse in terms of memory consumption.
So when you say games get worse and worse, that means they need more and more and more and more.
More and more, and that's unlikely to change in any time in the near future.
I got to say, nice catch, Leo, who almost dropped his brand new 12-inch PowerBook. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for the save.
I got it. It's okay. Everything's fine.
Wow. Couldn't miss the floor by this much.
Did you see that?
I saw that. Because I heard the rustle.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry. All right. So, okay, let's take one of the harder games out there. For we're not talking about like tic-tac-toe or any of the stuff like that. Snoods is not going to really require.
No, and all the games built into Windows too. Things like that. Don't
even bother about it. But let's say you fire up Unreal Tournament. It won't even start in your system. You've got a 1 gigahertz system. What do you do?
It should at least start up. And then for the most games today, they actually include auto detectors too for your hardware. They'll go through your sound and your video and how much you have of all of those things.
Sort of optimize
for it. Sticking with the default there is a good idea.
Okay.
In terms of things you can do like drivers, everything from the motherboard chipset on down to the sound card and the video card should be updated.
So get the latest drivers.
Definitely. And especially with video drivers, they tend to fix a lot of problems that occurred that were causing by the previous set of drivers. So having the latest ones tends to clear up more bugs than not.
Speaking of fixing stuff, games, patches, update them constantly?
Name one game that hasn't had a patch.
Name one game.
Except for maybe Solitaire.
Okay. And I'm sure
every game today is shipped unfinished in a sense, where there is code that's not optimized.
Unfinished is such an ugly word. Let's say less stable than the manufacturer would like.
And when you put it out to millions of people and they get to try it on various combinations of hardware, you run into issues. So by all means, go to the site you bought the game from and download the latest updates for it.
That's a good thing to do. What about if you're looking at, let's say you've got let's say you got a 2 gigahertz or better processor, you got a reasonably new ATI or NVIDIA graphics card in there. You've got to have, is a half a gig of memory, is 512 megabytes starting to be the minimum?
Yeah, I really agree with that now, especially with games like 1942 even, and some of the massive multiplayer games on
Tell me about 1942 in memory.
1942 in memory, if you have 256 megs on just about every system I've seen, you have issues when you try to leave the game and go into menus to make changes, going back and forth in the game to
When you say issues, you mean it takes like 10 minutes to get into a menu?
That issue in particular.
Okay.
And in terms of load times, it's really, sometimes they say the hard drive is more of an issue, but generally speaking, the CPU and the memory determine how fast any game is going to load.
Okay.
Hard drives tend to deliver the data fast enough. Of course, a faster hard drive on a fast system.
It's going to load the levels.
Yeah, you don't want to put a slow hard drive on a fast system, definitely, things like that. But for 1942 as well, they also had lots of sound problem issues. And if you go to their website, they have specific fixes for every chipset you can imagine.
So again, it's a situation where we want to patch the game.
Custom settings and things like that as well.
We got like 12 seconds inside one of the configurations for a graphics card here.
Typical of a lot of games. You'll see like Generals or this game 1942 with custom video performance. Go low, medium, high. Start it low if it's chugging along.
And see if it'll actually
Gives you generic settings. Leave things like shadows off and light maps off. And basically turn everything down to see how the performance is. By performance, it's basically how smooth it is. As you move the mouse around, does it flow nicely?
One last thought before we go. Screen resolution. If you lower the screen resolution, I mean, from like 10 by 7 to 640 by 480, is that going to be a huge performance boost?
Definitely. If you love the eye candy, you can't live without it. You're going to turn everything up. If it's going to chug on you, then turn the resolution down to gain back some of that performance you've lost.
So basically, if you want the big, beautiful screen, you're going to have to pay for the big.
I'll be honest, I use some of the fastest computers built today with the best video cards you can buy, and I still won't go above 2x AA, any aliasing, or 4 or 8x in some cases.
And you've got one of the fastest graphics cards on the planet.
I'm a stickler for good frame rates, and without a good frame rate, that smooth motion is everything. Being able to flick the mouse as fast as possible, and it just drills right onto a target or whatever you're playing. It'll just bog the system down.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the gamer's mouth itself. You want more tips, you want more information, you want more settings to play around with, hardware recommendation and tweaks, go to the article at thescreensavers.com. Robert, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen.